questa serata di presentazione domande e risposte con Daryna Kovalchuk. Giusto? Ok. La nostra collega ucraina è una fondatrice e direttrice dell'istituto IKOS dell'Ucraina e insegna kinesiologia, è rappresentante delle principali scuole di kinesiologia, tra cui quella australiana, americana ed europea. Lavora come kinesiologa, però questo è molto interessante, è laureata all'Università Pedagogica Nazionale dell'Ucraina e ha un master in psicologia. Tra le altre cose è anche insegnante di psicologia. Infatti dopo la laurea ha continuato a insegnare all'università, ha fatto un master e ha coniugato le sue conoscenze di kinesiologia e del lavoro sul corpo con le sue conoscenze di psicologia. Io personalmente ho avuto modo di vederla l'anno scorso al congresso di Tenerife, e mi ha colpito molto la sua relazione sull'autismo, okay? E come praticamente si può accedere facilmente attraverso una tecnica di Richard Hart, che sono i format, che poi penso Daria ci parlerà stasera, ci introdurrà su questo concetto, e per entrare proprio nelle aree specifiche del cervello. Come nella natura di tutte le cose, nulla nasce a caso, perché prima di ascoltare Daria al congresso dell'anno scorso, noi come Wellness Kinesiology abbiamo delle coppie di emozioni che lavorano sia col sistema nervoso che con il meridiano straordinario ipotalamo. E molte di queste coppie di emozioni, attraverso la mia ricerca in kinesiologia, fanno riferimento proprio ad alcune aree del nostro cervello. Quindi, ed è una cosa molto interessante vedere come man mano che si scoprono determinate zone del cervello, le stesse coppie di emozioni che noi normalmente utilizziamo possono essere indicative di uno stress accumulato in aree del cervello. E per cui ho trovato molto interessante quello che lei ha detto in modo particolare, poi penso che questa sarà una delle domande che faremo, perché noi parliamo di reazione allo stress di forma autistica, quindi è quello che ogni tanto si chiama il blocco dell'autore, il blocco di quella persona che presenta, eccetera. E Daria sarà presente a gennaio dal 16 al 19. Io ringrazio anche Marco Rado, che è qui presente con il suo istituto Physics, perché insieme a lui stiamo collaborando per creare questo evento. E premetto che molte persone si sono già iscritte a questo seminario e ho promesso a loro di preparare questi nostri colleghi alla conoscenza che Daria ci darà. Per cui da fine novembre per tutto il mese di dicembre, il lunedì sera dedicherò mezz'ora, 3/4 d'ora ad anticipando i concetti teorici di quello che poi sarà la parte pratica che faremo con Daria nei 4 giorni di seminario. I seminari naturalmente poi si svolgeranno a Bergamo, in via Borgo Palazzo, quindi è facilissima, una sede facile da raggiungere. Bene, io direi che ho presentato quasi tutto di Daria, tranne la sua mission che ho trovato su internet, che le dichiara che da bambino sognava di diventare una scienziata. Quindi, come dice Daria, le sue invenzioni avrebbero potuto salvare persone e animali dalla povertà e dai disastri. Okay. Marco, tu che la conosci un pochettino di più, Puoi aggiungere qualche altra cosa?
Sì, secondo me una delle qualità di Daria è proprio la competenza approfondita che ha del sistema nervoso del cervello e della sua capacità di insegnare e rendere semplice ed abbordabile concetti che sono magari abbastanza complicati, perché addentrarsi nei vari nuclei cerebrali e le funzioni dei vari nuclei non sempre è semplice, però proprio abbinando questa profonda capacità del sistema nervoso con le sue conoscenze anche di psicologa, riesce a rendere semplice e e utilizzabile tutti questi concetti in forma kinesiologica in maniera molto, secondo me, molto interessante per poter lavorare poi anche a livello clinico con le persone.
Perfetto. Allora, possiamo iniziare con lasciando la parola a Daria e ascoltando dalle sue parole quello che è un po' la sua storia, che l'ha portata a conoscere la kinesiologia e a fare questa fusione tra psicologa e tra psicologia e kinesiologia.
Okay, so I think that we can start. And
Okay,
Maurizio
great.
is asking, how did you started with kinesiology, and how can what can you tell us about your work that you are going to present in Italy?
Okay, so the question is about how first I met kinesiology, right? Yeah, so I was a teacher of psychology in university and I did my practical psychology with the clients. And probably I have translation, right? So I have to stop. Yeah. Uh,
No
Ludmila
problem.
will translate me and I don't hear her, right?
Okay, okay.
Yes, you
Okay.
don't hear the translator.
Okay, because I have never done that. Okay, good. So, and then I started to work with different issues from my clients, like physical issues, some kind of pain in the body. And people could say to me that they know that it's psychosomatic pain because doctor can find anything about that. And the doctor recommend to go to psychologist. So that was first time when I started to think about, let's say, so what can I do like a psychologist? And I started to explore body-mind therapy. And the time we had the chance because we had some advanced courses from other countries, which like where you could study body mind approach. And I started to teach, to learn, and then later teach like Reich therapy, Lowen therapy, so everything around how our body and mind communicated. And that was my first step. But once in one workshop, I met a muscle test that was a presentation of kinesiology. And when I saw that, it was like, insight for me because, like I saw how you can use a muscle test to actually identify a core problem of for your client. So you shouldn't use some mental model of how different symptoms can work or, that's too simple for me. Sounds like if you have some issue with the communication, you will have pain in the throat or something. It's too easy. So it should be, it's obviously that there should be more complex mechanisms behind that. So when I first met a muscle test, I understood this is a great, unique tool, how we actually physically can learn that symptom, that story of symptoms, and what we can do about that. And then I started to look at Cash for Health courses, and then I met neuroenergetic kinesiology with format system, and that actually was like a great, unique opportunity for my personal work, how I can make my psychological work deeper, and actually how I can physically can shift a very complex issue from my clients on a physical level. So for me, it's a great combination of my psychological knowledge, how I understand different mechanisms, trauma, how trauma works, how psychosomatic symptoms works, and what I can do with it using kinesiology things. So first it was like touch for health, and later it was format systems. That's why I will talk today about the format system. But how I see that you can intellectually know about how something works, and you can work with the consciousness of your client. So on the consciousness level with a verbal technique, but once you will be, like stopped because you can do more in verbal approach. You need something physically to do physically, and the kinesiology is a unique tool. So what we can physically can do with something. So if you work with a shock trauma, or especially what's going on now, it will be a lot around the shock trauma or PTSD or anxiety. So the kinesiology is a physical tool that you can use to physically work with these things. So I can know that I have anxiety and I can feel that, and I can say, I don't want to feel anxiety, right? But I can't regulate my nervous system just because I want that. So kinesiology helps us physically to regulate nervous system, to regulate our body, to be able, like to feel better. And then once after the big work with the kinesiologist, I can physically can stop my anxiety, or I can stop my fear, or I can stop have this phobia of dogs or whatever. So I see that it's a great future for different specialists, like especially like psychologists, who really want to help their clients to shift their issues. So that was my experience about how about kinesiology. First, it was psychology and psychotherapy and teaching. So basically, I'm a teacher in the University of Psychology, different subject of psychology. And then it was body-mind therapy and psychosomatic, and then kinesiology. And I think this is the best what I ever met around different approaches. And that's what I usually say to my students. Let's see, if I will meet something better, you will know that first. So for me now, kinesiology is really the best tool what we can use now in the modern world, because the modern world actually needs something like integrative approach, where we can combine different approaches, even psychology, nutritiology, or and kinesiology, like to really help people. If you really want to help person,
Daria,
yeah,
yeah, can
yeah,
you slow
too
down
fast.
a little? Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, okay, good.
The
Yeah, sorry.
translator needs because some of the terms has to be translated, like PSD.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
PTSD, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Thank you, Marco.
So
Yeah.
because a few people has joined or just now, I would say where to find the translation. Quindi per chi di voi si è appena collegato, se voi andate in fondo alla barra di Zoom, troverete una serie di iconi e ce n'è una con scritta inglese. Se voi andate su quella lì dove c'è scritto inglese, viene fuori una tendina e c'è scritto spagnolo. Voi dovete scegliere spagnolo dove troverete la traduzione italiana. Ok?
Okay, great.
Thank you
And
very
I'll
much.
try.
Se no possono pure seguire in inglese se voglio.
Okay, I
Ok.
can continue. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so today I will present I think 3 topics. First is what is format system, and what actually how it works, and this is a fundament of all my work now. This is first. Second, we will discuss how we can use the format system to work with stress in different brain structures, because our core issue for today is how we can work with a complex mental issues or even disease like, let's say, autism. That was our goal for today. So what we have to understand that the format system we can use for many things, but because of today we have to discuss how to work with formats with autistic people, and to use this technique for this issue. That's why I have to explain how to work with different brain structures, first of all. So that's why it's 3 steps in my talk. First is what format and how it works. Second, how we can use it for to work with the different brain areas, and how we can use format to have access to different brain areas, because each brain area work with specific function, have a specific function. So it's quite interesting. And knowing that, we can understand actually what results we can expect, right? So, and at the end, I will briefly explain what is personality disorder, what is autistic stress response, how I understand that, because it's actually my work, how I see that, how I understand that, and what we can do about it using kinesiology and using format system like a tool. So like a tool. So I have to open the PowerPoint. Just give me a second. Okay. Hope that everyone sees the screen, and we can start. So first of all, as I mentioned, we have to discuss. Okay, a sec. Please slow down. Yeah, good. Please slow down. Yeah. So first of all, we have to discuss, as I mentioned, what is acupressure format. And as I work with Neuroenergetic Kinesiology Institute, which is found by Hugo Tobar. So then we have to discuss a bit how this technology works. And then we will discuss how we can use format system to work with a brain and different brain areas separate, like format for cortex or format for limbic. And then when we will understand how we can use it for different brain areas, I will explain how we can build a whole pathway. So which means like a functional approach. So how we can work with a specific brain areas which involve in a specific process. Let's say it can be pathway for anxiety, or it can be pathway for fear, or at the end it can be a pathway for autistic stress response. And I have to say that I have found quite interesting scientific approach about the autistic neurology pathway. So knowing how format system works, we can combine classical scientific knowledge and kinesiology tools together to actually have a very successful work. So then we will discuss this autistic pathway, how it works in the brain, and how we can work with it, how we can have access to this pathway using the format system. So then we'll, as I mentioned, we will discuss autism, autistic criteria, just to briefly understand what that. And then as one of the reason of autistic people is a different violation in a level of neurology. So then we will have to discuss this different brain nuclei and brain structure involved in autism. And then I will show a small protocol, how it looks like physically, what you actually physically will learn, what you actually physically will do using the format system. So before we start to talk about the format system, we have to talk about basic things. So what we do in kinesiology, basically, we learn the connectivity between different muscles, right, which associated with specific meridian, and this meridian associated with specific organ and emotion. And this whole chain, like muscle, meridian, organ, and emotion, I call a functional chain. And we have this different functional chain which relate to different meridians. And with the help of this functional chain, we can describe basically how our organism works. And if something go wrong with one of this chain, like meridian of heart or meridian of kidney, then we can say about the disbalance on the level of our organism, our body. So this is a basic fundamental association what we use basically in the kinesiology. And actually these chains, they represent basically the state of our body. So when we test associated muscle, like muscle associated with a central meridian or muscle associated with the heart, we activate that stress which relate to the whole chain. So why it's important to understand, and why it's so unique doing kinesiology, because this is a way how we can physically like touch the organ, associated emotion, and different processing around this organ and this meridian. Because I mean, personally, me, I'm not able, like I'm not a doctor and I can physically touch the organs. And I mean, I'm not someone like a special person to be able to scan meridians just with my eyes. But I'm a kinesiologist, so I have an associated muscle. And when I activate that, I actually have all this information from organ, from meridian, and from associated emotion. So this is a unique thing that helps me to have this whole information and that whole stress activation. Then when later, if I found the stress on this functional chain, I can use for correction. So if I have found stress in this functional chain, let's say I tested like supraspinatus, or which is associated with central meridian, and I have found stress in level of cortex and limbic, I activated that. So I activated some kind of stress on the level of my brain. So it may looks like I have a cognitive conflict, or I don't see a solution of a complex issue, or I have a cognitive issue like memory issue, or some issue with my attention, whatever. It's all around the cortical function. And this whole stress I can find testing the associated muscle, because it show up the stress around the meridian and associated organ, which is brain. So when I activated that, then I can find the way how to balance that. So this is a basic fundamental thing what we do. And say in NK, energetic kinesiology, we use 20 functional system, and we use alarm points for diagnostic. So which exactly system, like central meridian, government, lungs, or whatever, under stress to activate that and actually then to work with it. So this is a table which briefly gives us briefly gives us a perception of this 20 functional system. Like you can see here, a functional system of central meridian, which is associated with the brain. And if you talk about the central meridian, so it's a cortex and limbic. If you talk about the government vessel, we have this association with a brainstem and spinal cord. And then stomach, which is stomach, and spleen, which can be a pancreas and a spleen. So it's like a 20 different system and 20 different muscle, which basically represent how our body or organism works. And if you have any kind of stress or complex situation or physical symptoms, we can find this disbalance describing the state of this different functional system. So what we usually do, we test associated muscle. So let's say we will talk today a lot about the brain. So in all my examples, I will just be focused on the central vessel and associated muscle. So if I want to work with the brain, right? So and I want to activate the central meridian because I want to do something about my brain function, cortex and limbic. So then I have to test the associated muscle, which is supraspinatus. And when I do that, so I activate that whole stress around the central meridian and around that possible issue, which can be on the level of cortex and limbic. So then when I've done that, and let's say I have found any kind of stress, and in neuroenergetic kinesiology, we usually use 4-stage of stress model. So whatever, I mean, it can be different approach and probably maybe different kinesiology direction, but the core idea, like to activate the stress, so to identify the stress in specific system and to find a way how we can work with that. So on the right side of my PowerPoint presentation, it's just example, I mean, which kind of correction we can use. So if you have found the stress on the level of central meridian, which is brain and limbic, cortex and limbic, then we can use, for example, neurovascular point, which is about blood flow. We can use, for example, neurolymphatic points or neuroemotional points or pressure points. So this all different type of correction. It's correction for sure, but also it describes the quality of stress. So what kind of stress? Is it something around lymphatic system? Is it something about emotions? Possible we also can work with emotions. Or it's something on the level of energetic structure, which means that we have to work with acupressure points. If we talk about the central meridian, I have to show here. So this is a core idea of kinesiology, to learn to study different functional systems. Let's say we work with 20, but can be different. We learn how to test different associated muscle. And we know that when we test that associated muscle, we have access to whole the chain with associated organ, meridian, and we can also find a way how to balance this system. So muscle test, this is access to different system of our body. So this is a way how we can describe something. Let's say we can describe if someone have a headache. So we ask, let's say, using muscle test, in which system we have stress, and we can find stress in different system. If we have cognitive issue or speech issue, then again we test a different system using the muscle test, and then we can find stress in other systems. So usually I say that kinesiology is like it's unique tool for sure, and it's also like you personally look for personal disbalance for a personal issue. So it's something for one person according to a special issue that person brings to you on a table. So then we use a 4-stage model of stress, but also it can be different. It's not so, strict. Maybe it can be 3 stages of stress. Anyway, this is a way how we can measure how much stress we have in a specific system. And then we use the points for correction, which is about what kind of stress we have. Is it physical stress? So is it emotional stress or is it energetical stress? It can be any. And this is a unique thing about kinesiology. You shouldn't, be to think about what kind of disbalance is that. You just test, and the way how you do that, it gives you information about the quality of stress. So what kind of stress? Is it emotion? Is it structure? and whatever. So this is example what we use for four-stage stress model, but still, I mean, we will not talk a lot about it now. It's not our topic, but still, I mean, if we test the muscle and it gives us some kind of information like, is it hypertonus or hypotonus? Anyway, this is a way how we can identify stress. So this is a fundament, but if we, for example, want to work with more complex issues, let's say I'm psychologist or someone physiotherapist or whatever, and let's say we have a client with a specific cognitive issue, like someone came to you after the stroke, or someone came to you like a child with some cognitive issue. You have the issue with a speech. So let's say small child can speak correctly, or like someone have an issue with a speech, or let's say you have adult who have issue with attention, because even grown-up people can have a complex issue with a attention deficit disorder. I mean, it can be absolutely any, or any issue with a reading problem. So it's many of things, right? And in this case, we have to think like, okay, so I have this basic model when I can test muscle, activate this brain areas, and find a way how to balance it. But if I want to look at it deeper, and let's say I know that the specific brain areas associated with specific function, so I'll be happy, like to try to work with not just the cortex and limbic together. For example, I have a child with emotional trauma who, because of high level of emotion of fear, is not able to see clearly. So I would be happy to work with amygdala, because amygdala, this is the limbic nuclei, which work for this emotional charge. And if our amygdala active, it means that our cortex is switched off. We don't physically have access to cortex. Or let's say I want to work with someone who have this, let's say, issue with the speech. So I want to work with the Broca area, for example, or for example, it's something to do with a high thinking brain and a cognitive issue. And let's say I want to work with the prefrontal cortex, which is our thinking brain with a consciousness. So, and then I know that these different areas, they have their different function, but how can I have this access? How can I be sure that I will I work with this particular area, not other areas? And here the answer is that we can use the format system, because the format system, this is a system, this is a tool that gives this access to very specific structures of different parts of our body. So it can be access to different brain structures, it can be access to different, muscles, whatever. But today we talk about the brain. That's why my focus will be around the brain. So if you want to use not only muscle, meridian, and organ emotion, and we want to work deeper, then we have to look like deeper. So we have to look, okay, so if it's central vessel is not only like a unit cortex and limbic, it's like even cortex have a very complex architectonic like a structure. So it has a different location, and there are many of them, and each location have a specific function. Like here we can see, for example, prefrontal cortex, which is in the yellow color, and here where we can think where we have a really our executive function, where we can make a decision, where we can find a complex solution. It's actually something that makes us human being. And other areas can be about motor function, about sensitivity, about visual, like basic visual work fields, visual fields, or this each area is about something. So this is my interest. If I want to work with a complex issue, I have to know like which brain structure, which function has, and how, like a kinesiologist, I can have access to these different structures. So when we talk about the format system, this is a great answer of this complex issue. This is answer on a question: how can I have access directly to a very specific structures of, let's say, brain? So when we talk about the pressure format system, this is a combination of different kind of qualities of energy, which gives us this unique frequency which associated with specific structure. So when you talk about the central meridian and the cortical limbic, so the central meridian in general reflect how together cortex and limbic work. But when we use not only meridian system and chi energy, and we combine this chi energy and specific points with other and quality of energy, and we will talk about it later, like we will also talk about how we can combine chi energy, which flows on our meridian system, with nadi, with prana energy. This gives us this unique combination of energies which associated with specific structures. So when we combine these different qualities like nadi energy, like 8 extra meridians, and 14 meridians, which is chi energy, then like it's like accord on a piano. So then we have this unique combination which gives us this access to a specific areas. So how it can work. So when we use finger modes, like different finger modes you can see on the screen, like you see like a chakra mode, like organ, gland, or different type of finger modes. We also can use word mudra. It's same thing, mudra or finger modes or mode. And on the right side of my screen, you can see acupressure points. So now here you can see the government vessel points here, right, behind, right? And let's say if you talk about central meridian and central meridian points, it can be here on the front part of the body. So when we use this finger mode together with acupressure points, these two qualities, or we activate different qualities of energy, which at the end gives us this unique access to a specific area. So not together cortex and limbic at all, right? Together, but specifically on the, let's say, we can start with simple things, what we will do on the brain format. We will start to learn how to have access to a basic structure of the brain, like cortex, with different locations, because we have different lobes of the cortex, how we can have separate access to a limbic system, and some fundamental basic nuclei of the limbic system, like amygdala, for example, or hippocampus, which work with the memory and some types of self-perception and also emotional regulation. We will also work with beta nucleus terminalis, which is also limbic nuclei. We can translate like just other limbic nuclei, which also influence on emotional regulation. But this is what we will do on brain format. That's why it's a basic format course. We will talk about how the brain works, how we can reach different areas associated with different functions, and how we can have access using modes and acupressure points to these different areas. This is basic. This is absolutely basic. So when we use modes, we activate pranic energy, and when we use acupressure points, we activate chi energy. So acupressure format is a unique combination of different types of energy, like prana and chi, which gives us access to different structures of our organism. Like as today we talk about the brain, so today my focus on the brain. And each format corresponds to the frequency of some specific structure. So at the end, later we will have a format, acupressure format, for specific brain nuclei, brain area, or even brain cell, or even white matter or gray matter, depending on what we want to do. So this is a way how we can learn how the brain function and what we can do about it. Because knowing how the brain function is quite important to to find that code with what nuclei and with what structure you have to work to shift some complex issue. Because if you want to work with anxiety, it will be some brain nuclei. But if you want to work with autism, it will be other brain nuclei. So here in a format system, I think it's important to understand two components. One is science, because all things what we do is based on science, and I really respect that, because science, should work on and to make people's life better. So all what we do, what we've done, and what's already done is based on science, like which nuclei done what function, do what function. But the kinesiology too is actually what we physically can, how we can work with it, how we can shift stress in these areas, and with what issues we can work. So this is actually the unique way how we can identify stress in very in different areas of the brain, and even layers and cells and different type of cells and different pathways when we talk about the pathways, and then you can work with it, and then you can shift to very complex issues. So again, we have to hold in our perception in our head that we work with the finger modes, right? There's different combination how we can we can use our fingers and our hands. And so when we do that, we activate energy which calls prana, and the prana here this is a representation of the basic prana channels like central prana channels, which is Sushumna, other channels like Ida, Pingala. It's like, you know, like it's channels, and the prana goes through these channels. Also, the pranic channels can look like this, so it's everywhere. So, and prana also work with the chakras. So when we hold the finger mode, we activate some quality of prana, and this is a way how we can activate this specific, unique frequency what we need for our work. And you know, like mudra, it's quite interesting because it's not only about Vedic or about yoga tradition. We have many of them in Orthodox Church and all other cultures. So many cultures use that, and the whole idea is that when we hold that, we activate a specific frequency. And some people probably work with different mudras because you may have a mode for chakra or for muscle or for structure or for meridian system, for meridians, whatever. But this is the way what we do, we activate the frequency. And even if we will come back to the beginning of my talk, when I described this functional chain, when we activate muscle, when we are, and with the help of this activation, we activate the stress in the meridian and the associated organ. Remember, then second step, we have to distress that stress we have found. So then let's say we even on that step, we can use modes like, okay, so what kind of stress is that? Is it emotional stress? So we can use emotional mode, or is it energetical stress? So then we can use acupressure points and look for some points on these meridians to distress it. So so this is what I want to say, that different finger modes, this is something to do with a different frequency. And other part of acupressure formats, what we use, this is a chi energy, which runs on different meridians, like 12 or 14. And this is example of central meridian, which is in the front, and government meridian vessel, which is in the back. And you see that these meridians, they have a specific points, and each points also have a specific frequency associated with this meridian. So which means that when we pulse it, we also activate something around the cortex, limbic, brainstem, spinal cord. So this combination of different modes with different acupressure points, which means the other words. We activate nadi energy, prana energy, from nadi channels, and we activate chi energy. We create this unique code or unique frequency, which can, with the help of what, we can have this access to a specific thing. Like, for example, on my screen here, you can see a format for text. So when we hold it, and together two modes with the acupressure points, which is CV24. And it means this, when I do that, I activate the frequency of the cortex. And if I have a stress on the level of cortex, let's say fully cortex, so then how you think, like, then if I test a muscle test, if I use a muscle test, what it will show me? So for sure, if I activate this, so I will see a muscle test what's going on the cortex level. So the muscle test will show up or how many stress I have in a specific format. So later, if I will have a format, for example, for specific structure like amygdala, so I have to hold this and this, so modes, points, and other points. So if I activate the amygdala, so my muscle test will show me how much stress I have in amygdala. If I will have a format for prefrontal cortex or frontal lobe, which is like this plus this, so then my muscle test will show me how much stress is there. So we still have to keep in mind this model that acupressure format is a way how we can identify stress in a very specific structure. And as much deep you study, learn, or know how something works, like a brain, for example, and you are very interested in very specific topic like autism or anxiety or fear, whatever, so then you will need more detailed format, more detailed access to work with this issue. So this is a core idea, about what we are doing here, right? So when we talk about brain format, which is a course which calls brain format system, there we have to learn how to work with basic format. And then when we study these basic formats and we know what mean cortex and different lobes, what mean limbic system and different nuclei, what mean brain stem and different structures of the brain stem and what function they do, then we can go next step, and then we can talk about, okay, so what's deeper? And then, like next step, okay, so there's we can divide our cortex not only on lobes, but different Brodmann areas, like it was on my picture with different segments on the cortical level. And then we can study the formats for these areas, like Brodmann area, and to work with Broca area, with premotor cortex, whatever we want to do. So this is our goal, like to learn how to use different formats for brain, and we start with the basic things. So on brain formats, we study formats for brain structures, so cortex, limbic, brainstem, and spinal cord and nerves. And then on a course of autism, for sure, we will need more complex knowledge and more complex format system, because we will work with very specific issue. So if it's clear, I mean, the whole idea about the format system, that actually using this combination of acupressure points and finger modes, we have access to specific areas of the brain. So maybe then next we can talk about, like, okay, how we can use that knowledge for working with specific issue. And let's say, I mean, I interested in many topics, like not only autism. I've done a course about anxiety disorder. I've done a course about bipolar disorder, schizoid reaction. Last course which I've done is about dysmorphic disorder, how we perceive our body. But today we talk about the autism just because it's our interest for now. But just I want to, like to give a, like impression that we can do a lot of things, not only autism, it can be many things. So if we talk about the autism, we understand that autism is a neurological disease, and it's a lot to do with a brain violation in how the autistic brain works. So briefly, I will say that just a few criteria how scientists identify the autism. So basic things about autism is that autism kids or people with autism, they have issue with the communication. So they have lack of communication, and they have issue with some movement. So they have a repetitive movement, and they have very limited interest. And many of kids with autism have issue with the speech, or some of them even don't speak at all. So when the doctors have a diagnosis of autism for someone, they talk about social development. So how the child able to be adapted to a society, because kids with autism, they're not able to be adapted to a society. It's very complex. If we talk about the severe autistic disorder, so it's quite complex about the social adaptation. More light version, we can talk about the social adaptation. So actually, what I want to say that autism is a very complicated topic, to be true. And in Tenerife, when I met Maurizio, I talked, like I said more about that, because I had like an hour to talk about the autism. But here, like just briefly, I have to say just basic things. things like, so people with autism have issue with the social development, with the communication, with the speech, and also issue with the repetitive behavior and very obsessive interests, like the same food, the same way to go back home, the same they usually prefer not toys but some technical things, whatever, and they for sure have issue with speech. So even when we talk about social development, communication, and speech issue and behavior, first of all, we have to think about how the brain function, because for sure, I mean, speech circuit, it's a brain issue. Social adaptation and communication, it's brain circuits. Behavior regulated by our brain structure. So a lot of things to do around the autism is to do about the brain and different structure of the brain. So here are some symptoms like deficiency in social emotional regulation. So kids with autism, they are not able to understand what you feel. I mean, they don't have this emotional intelligence. So they totally don't understand what other people feel. And they are not able, you know, like to put on someone's shoes, like we say. So they can't understand what's going on with other people, and it looks like they're very cold and distant, and that's why it for sure caused many issues with the communication. So that's why they have limited empathy. They're not able to empathize to someone, and for sure they are not able to express their emotion and feelings. They have a lack of emotion and feelings, and you know, they even, if the mother cries, they didn't can't, you know, like to also, you know, like to feel what she feel, because normally what kids do when the mother cry, they react immediately, and kids with autism don't do that. They don't look at the eyes, what we usually do when we communicate with each other. This is a big issue. And so there's a whole a big problem around this behavior, social behavior, and difficulties in communication with other kids, and for sure a lot of issue, you know, like how they play games with toys, and what they do with that, because they do it in a weird way, not like what usually people do. So, and all other things, so they can be sensitive to temperature or to other sounds, or, you know, like other senses. So they're too sensitive to different things. And when the scientists explore, so where this autism, how it works, so how we can identify autism, they say about the, for sure, first things, it's a violation on a genetic level. And for sure, using the format system, we can have access to a different genes, neurological it's neurological disorder. So it means that we have a violation in different brain structure. This is our focus of attention for today. And all other different things like violation in amino acid disbalance, and different approaches about oxidative stress, methylation, a lot of stuff talk about the inflammation, and much more. But today we talk about the brain and the neurological component of autism. So what I have found from different articles, that kids with autism, it was the scientists observed and explored that the violation in the next brain structure associated with autism. So it for sure cerebrum. I mean, you know, like cerebrum is our second brain, and so many things cerebrum do, not only physical modulation, it's also mental, emotional modulation, our vestibular system. And you know, like it's what I understand about the cerebrum, this is a huge neurological net which modulate everything, whatever you do, the way you behave, the way you talk. So this whole information is modulated by via the cerebrum. So for sure, brainstem, and a lot of theories says about the violation in different brainstem structures and that function associated with the brainstem according to autism. For sure, cortical areas like frontal, parietal lobe, and hippocampus and amygdala. But I also have found that unique articles where the scientists explore the whole pathway. So not just separate nuclei, not just separate brain structure, but how it works together. Because when you explore different psychological things, when you explore different, you know, like anxiety, autism, you know, it's not something that sits in the one nuclei. It's not something, you know, like just in different. Usually it's a combination of different nuclei which have a communication between each other. So it's what you call pathway, neurological pathway. So autism has its own pathway, and here on the table you can see a different boxes. Each box, it's different structures of the brain. That's why I'm said so many about the format system, because if you want to work with something specific, I mean, it's not enough to work with the meridian and muscle. You have to have a tool how we can have access to the specific brain areas. So here you can see inferior frontal gyrus, EFG, right? So it's like lowest part of the frontal gyrus, which is here, supramarginal marginal gyrus, supramarginal area for T, temporal parietal junction, superior temporal sulcus, all these areas. I mean, you shouldn't focus on the names. I mean, I actually really spent some time to learn that all names. But I mean, the whole idea, like just you have to see that it's different structures of the brain which have this connection between each other. So what we can recognize easily, it's hippocampus and amygdala and brainstem, and probably this is also probably well-known orbitofrontal cortex. And so here is just a pathway, and this pathway is under stress in people who has autism. So this connectivity between different nuclei and the way how this nuclei works is, like it's the way of how this system works is interrupted, it don't work correct. So this is briefly like if you want, I will send the PowerPoint presentation, or you can see it on my screen. But this is a description of what does it mean, which function has this different nuclei. So let's say temporal parietal junction and like supramarginal gyrus and superior temporal sulcus is, I mean, different. I think it's no sense for now, like to talk in detail which function it has, but most of this structure, just, like how you usually I say it in my language to finish gestalt, like not to leave it like not finished. So all these nuclei, most of them, they associated with a system which we call mirror neural system, which helps any person, all of us has it, which helps us to reflect other people emotion, other people's state. So this is a system how we can understand other. Just sorry, it's my cat. It's just my cup with my tea and my cat. Sorry.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So
it's okay.
yeah.
The cat
It's
is
just
we're crazy.
yeah. I have a space with my books, and there usually I put my cup. Okay, so the whole idea is, like these different nuclei, they work with this mirror neural system, and this is a system which helps us to understand other people, to reflect them, and this is a fundamental system for our consciousness, because the basic understanding of consciousness is the ability to reflect reality. So this system is like a tool how we can reflect other people reaction, how we can learn from other people. And last thing, this is a fundamental for our development, because a child learns something from parents and from other people. This is our human being. So for sure, in autistic brain and for people with autism, this system is broken. They are not able, that's why they're not able to be social adapted. They are not able to understand other people's emotion and other things. So this brain nuclei, they work with this system, and people with autism has issue with that. So to talk about it, like all together, we discussed what is format system, how it can work for brain structures, and how we can use this knowledge about the formats, access to different brain structures, working with a specific issue. So our example is autism. So if you know, let's say, which brain structure involved in autism, and scientists can help us with it. So what I've done, I collect this information. Then we can use formats for this area. So this is supramarginal gyrus, which is Brodmann area 40. So, and here is a format for this structure. So if we hold the finger modes with the points, and we also use this different things like adding points to circuit, probably most of people know with circuit. And then this is how we can have access to this brain structure. And also, hope it's not too much, but this format is created like structure and function together, because the structure governs function, and depending on which structure we have, then we can talk about the function. So if we talk about the supramarginal gyrus, so the structure is a cortex plus CV21, so cortex plus CV21. But when we add the modes like physiology or psychology with physiology, it means that we activate the function of this nuclei. So exactly what does this nuclei? So let's say if we talk about the mirror nervous system, so how the system physically works, so how the structure generate the function. So what I've done in my work, I started to explore, I mean, how we can use format system not only with physiology mode, because it's function is not only physiology, but psyche is also function. So it's function of the brain. So in my work, I combine modes of physiology and psychology, understanding the psyche process, like mirror nervous system, reflection of other face. This is a function of different brain nuclei. So here you can see the function, and we also use different specific points, like let's say in this example, it's bladder meridian points, which are associated with the way how we can balance it. So we can have points for fear correction, for panic correction, for like in my example, this is a consciousness correction, correction of stress in a different level of consciousness, and so we combine the structure, function, and pulsing the points all together. We distress the specific area and helps brain to work better. To improve the function of the brain. And for sure, I mean, I don't say that we cure someone, no, never. And it's nothing to do with, you know, like, we can't change someone's brain, but we can improve, we can, you know, like brain without stress work better. So we can help the brain works better. And for sure that it means that we can expect better motor function, or for example, a better speech function, or more clear consciousness, or more clear thinking, whatever. But this is a result of when the brain work better. But for sure we can change autistic brain, but we can make it work better for sure. So Hugo Tobera is a founder of the neuroenergetic kinesiology, and I'm sure most of people know that his teacher was Richard Ott, who is a founder of format system, and actually the first format was created by Richard Ott. So in some way he's our teacher till now, because all people who work with the format, who develop the system of formats, you know, like we develop Richard Ott works. So Hugo Tober developed it a lot. So he done a lot of courses. I teach personally a lot, and me also. I also started to explore how different thing works. And as I'm psychologist, and my interest is different psyche processing, different psyche states. So I explore biochemical and neurological background of different psychological states, including autism, including anxiety, and I use format system, how to work with it. So my work is explore scientific field, different articles, and to collect all that information to build the pathway, you know, like to know how it works. And I use Richard Ott and Hugo Tober works to physically work with it. So, I mean, a lot of teachers in different countries who teach neuroenergetic kinesiology, and also me. And for sure, I mean, I do all my best to develop this system and to develop new stuff. So would be happy, you know, like to teach for Italy, to teach for students from Italian Institute of Kinesiology, and I hope I will. So our plan is to teach brain format course today and autistic course around autistic stress response. So this is my topic for today. If you have any questions, I'm really happy to answer on it.
Grazie, thank you Daria per la tua esposizione molto, molto chiara, e se ci sono delle domande in chat potete scriverle in chat